where everybody's at. I got a pretty good idea. I was trying to do some internet stalking here before we started. Just drop it in the chat just so I have a little bit of awareness. But yes, internet. So I've been to, I think, I don't know, maybe a dozen summits over the past 12 months, all over the country. And lead generation or lead flow seems to be a common theme that comes up quite a bit. And I think what is useful there is kind of understanding, for the most part, things that are in your control versus not in your control, and how the whole thing works. So if we zoom out just a little bit, there's kind of three components to lead management in general. So actually, let me back up. Let me introduce myself. That would be great, right? Yeah, so Jason Fernandez, I own CrossFit Rife, as I put in the chat, for 14 years in October. Been on seminar staff for 10, coming up in August. And originally from Louisiana, now in Virginia Beach, and have been here for almost 20 years. So yeah, that's me. And I love all things CrossFit. So I do a lot of things. They all just happen to be CrossFit. So as far as components of your lead management, so there's your call it this big bucket called SEO, which is just like a consumer's ability to find you. So that's the first thing, right? So organic search and how that works. Then there's the user experience, or sometimes referred to as UX, on your website. And then there is lead management and how you work your leads. All three of those matter. And the first thing I tell people before you start tweaking and breaking things, because it's very easy to do on the internet, is track. You have to track. And I mean track, like, if I asked all of you exactly what your lead flow is over the past week, just raise your hand if you could tell me, like, literally, like, exactly how many leads, what your show rate was on whatever your intake is, and how many of those you converted. How many of you guys can do that? Okay. So that's the first thing we have to do. So I think there's kind of, this can shift just a little bit, but let's just, for the sake of keeping it simple, say that there are four kind of wickets that we have to get through. Somebody finds me and hits the information that says, I'm interested, on my website. So that is now a lead. They show up, whatever your system is, don't worry about it. Then so that's step one. Step two would be, I schedule them for some sort of consult, free intro, no sweat intro, enter whatever your lead intake looks like. Step three is they book for whatever your onboarding is, right? So I've got lead, consult, onboarding, and then step four is they join. The first thing I have to do is I have to figure out where the gaps are, and you have to track those. So we create these things called value chains for people, and typically the first four columns in that spreadsheet look just like that. Because what will happen is, and we just did a big mastermind in Denver, and a lot of what we find is fear is typically a result of lack of information in almost any scenario, right? Like, hey, I'm afraid the business is going to go down. I'm like, hey, tell me your numbers, and then we don't know the numbers, right? So if I don't know the information, I don't have the data, it makes it very hard for me to create some sort of plan to either solve, mitigate, or work around whatever it is that I'm dealing with. So if I look at a website that might have, call it, let's just make up numbers to make them simple. They have 20 leads that come in a month organically through the website. They have 6 people show up for consults, and then they convert 4 of them into foundations, and then all 4 of those people join, right? So essentially I had a total of 4 convert out of 20, so 20%. The 20% is important, but the real important is the gap, meaning the big gap, if I line those up and it goes 20, 6, 4, 4, where's the obvious gap there? It's between 20 and 6. So that tells me potentially a couple things. Either I'm not following up, or there's something going on with, like, how the user experience on my website is going. Okay, so the first thing is I have to figure out what those numbers are. That will identify the gap, which means I can identify what potential solutions I could propose, or I could start to implement, because it might not be a lead flow issue. It might be, I need to figure out a better way to follow up, or I need to follow up more timely, or I need to change the communication, or I might need to turn off automation, whatever it might be. and follow up a little bit differently. Because if I can get 10 people to show up, and then that conversion rate pushes down the line. So I had 20 that hit my website. I had 10 of them show up versus 6. Well, just based on the previous numbers, I'm going to convert 2 to 3 more of those based on my previous conversion numbers. At which point, for a lot of gyms, that can be the difference between going net 3 or 4 or net 0 every single month. It has nothing to do with more leads. It just has to do with like understanding how that lead flow works from hitting your website all the way through they join. So I wanted to kind of outline that first. So the first thing with regard to SEO is make sure that you have your Google business page set up and that you're maximizing to the extent that you can keyword and search. Now, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole because this is a big bear with regard to that. Most people have to hire out in some way, shape, or form to figure out how their SEO is going. I typically tell people go to somebody in your ecosystem and request help for that. Most of us are not internet gurus, nor do we care to spend hours and hours digging into Google and search engine optimization of my website. But it is a thing. Just straight up, it is a thing. So on that note, Danielle, can I share by chance? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right, so I picked a couple of people that I had on the list that were registered for the call. And so this one's in Melbourne. So I just Googled, can you guys see this? Yeah, so I just Googled CrossFit 224. So right out of the gate, and I had no idea this was going to be the case. This is the first gym that I picked, and this is what happened. So right out of the gate, this creates a search problem for this gym. So the affiliate is CrossFit 224. When I search that, obviously there's some cookies going on here because it's giving me Virginia Beach areas. But then if I go to 224, first thing that pops up is Instagram, which is not what I'm looking for. And then what I did a little bit of searching here is that this is actually Vault Fitness. Okay, which is whatever. If you want to brand your gym however you want to brand it, I just want to make sure that I'm getting plugged in correctly. And again, if I go to Yelp, so again, CrossFit 224, first thing is Instagram, second thing is Vault Fitness, which can create a little bit of issues as far as interpretation. And the third thing is Yelp, right? So if I go to, let's just say I go to Yelp, need to go here, and then I have to go to their website. Boom. Okay, so we're going to leave Yelp and we're going to go here. So the first thing that we need to look at here is like, this is a broken page, right? So right out of the gate, whatever's listed in Yelp takes me to a broken page. Now, not a big deal, but this leads kind of into UX, user experience. So right out of the gate, I have to navigate back to the homepage. Okay. Now it goes here, and this is a little confusing because I was looking for CrossFit 224, and this is now Vault Fit. Which again, if that's how you want to brand it, that's totally fine. But we're going to need to clear up how my SEO works, right? Basically, like what am I searching versus what does the consumer find? Okay, and I'm not picking on this gym. I've never met this person. They were literally just the first person I chose in there, and it's for all of us to learn. And the reality is like there's many gyms, so we do website audits on everybody that we work with, and this happens all the time. Okay. And they're like, hey, I'm not getting any leads. And it's like their gym is unsearchable. That's before we even get to the website. Okay. So we need to make sure that when people search things like CrossFit gym near me, CrossFit gym in my area, local CrossFit gym in Virginia Beach or Melbourne or Baltimore or Brooklyn or South Brooklyn, that these would be keywords that would be baked into your website in order for people to find it. Okay. So that's kind of like the cursory. Most of us could probably navigate that without having too much help on the kind of SEO side. So with that being said, I want to kind of break there before we move to UX. And does anybody have questions on that part? I know this is a very cursory kind of overview of SEO and this big monster that is like the internet, but anybody have any questions out of the gate?
I have one real quick, Fern.
Go ahead.
How do I test this for myself using my own equipment? Can I just launch a browser tab, an incognito tab, and because I think the cookies would affect whatever the results would
Correct.
be. But I'd like to see this like as my customers would see it.
Correct. Yeah. So typically, yeah, correct. So you are correct there, Rob. I would either launch an incognito tab, or what I'll typically do is I will send it to 5 or 6 random people who are not clients, and I want to see what search they pop up. Now, there
Okay.
are tools out there that will also show you keyword rankings. So CrossFit in your area. There are paid services that can be very expensive, up to $1,000 a month, all the way down to some kind of cookie cutter services or DIY that can be anywhere between 60 to less than $200 a month. So there's a lot of options out there. And I don't suggest everybody become an SEO expert. I do suggest that everybody do a little bit of research so that you understand, like, when you do hire somebody, if they're garbage at what they do or not. But there are some pretty simple tools in there that you can look. And if you set up your Google business profile and set up your Google Analytics, a lot of that can be figured out through that as well. GA4, which is the newest version of Google Analytics, I think just came online like a couple of months ago. There are more than enough YouTube videos on the internet to get you guys enough information to figure out how to connect that to your website. Or you're going to need the pixel off of there. Make sure that your Google business profile is set up. Even if you had no idea what you're doing, you could probably fumble your way around and get there in a few hours and get everything set up, at which point it'll start populating. But yes, Rob, you are correct. That is the best way to do that. Anybody else got anything?
Thank you.
Yep. Cool. All right, I'm going to share again. And Rob, I chose you just because I love you. And I knew you were going to be on the call. So now we're going to talk about user experience. Okay. So I picked Rob because I know Rob and I knew he would be okay with me pulling his website. And I had no idea what it was going to look like. So first things first, user experience. There's a couple components to user experience. We'll get the easy one out of the way, which is like the pictures on your website should speak to the people that you want to come into your gym. So what that means is, broadly speaking, when somebody shows up to your website, their first thought is, I can do that. Right? So we can all think of a handful of things that would not be in that scenario, like somebody snatching 225 or something like that. While it might look cool, it is definitely a turnoff. So this is a great picture. Clearly, this is a coach working with a client in this scenario. Again, nothing intimidating. Okay. And good verbiage here is good. Getting started is easy. Okay. So photos are worth 1,000 words, and those photos should tell the story that we want it to tell. Now, when we get into UX, really what we kind of look through is what I'd kind of describe as like a click-through rate. Like, how many clicks does it take me as the user to give you my information? Okay. So in this scenario, I'm on Rob's website. I would have to look at this in mobile, but like there's a potential here, Rob, where this button down here, I might need to scroll if I was on my phone to see that button. I don't know. I didn't pull it up on mobile, but you would want to check both. And where I'm going with that is, regardless of what that scenario looks like, I want the call to action, meaning this button, whatever your color button is and whatever it says, to be prominently placed on the homepage without ever having to move up or down, left or right. It should just be there and it's be like bam, and that button should scream, push, click here. Now, if I go to schedule consult, obviously it pops up this page. Now this goes into click rate. So we're 1 click in at this point. Obviously there's no more availability in June. So I'm going to go 2 clicks. Now I'm going to say, nope, Saturday doesn't work for me. Let's go 3 clicks. Let's go 4 clicks. Let's go 5. And then I'm going to go, let's just say that 6 would be, these would auto populate, 7, and then 8 schedule meeting. Okay. Now, when we're thinking about this, we have to understand that like people are lazy, particular people that are just like randomly scouring the internet. Okay. So when we're thinking about user experience, we have to understand, what is my website for? Its sole primary function is to capture information. Name, email, phone number, the end. Don't ask them any questions. Don't ask them to sign a waiver. Don't ask them what their goals are. Don't ask them any of that stuff. Now, some people are like, why not? I'm like, because you're going to ask them that when you reach out to them. personally. Okay. Also, most of those things will name, email, phone number in most smart devices will auto populate. So it will require no actually like thumbing of their phone to actually give you the information. So as soon as they scroll over it, it'll be like David Osorio 8675309. David at CrossFit South Brooklyn. Yes, thank you for getting that joke. So I want to make it very, very easy for them to give me the information. Now the question becomes, how do I fix what we just walked through? Because we had an 8-click series there, and essentially what I would tell you to do is, so if I go back here to Rob's website, is I would just reverse the order, right? So what happened is on Rob's website, it goes from hey, schedule a consult into a booking sequence. And the last thing that I do is give you my information. We just want to reverse it. So if you look at mine, again, prominently placed right on here, you don't have to scroll anywhere. And then everywhere I go on this website is the same button. All roads lead to one place. Okay. But if I click this button, it goes to a landing page. Boom, name, email, phone number. Boom. Once I hit claim my free consult, that would then take somebody into a booking sequence. Okay. Now, what I'll tell you is very few people, very few, less than 10% actually go through the booking sequence. And I actually don't care. I have their information and I'm going to follow up with them anyway. Okay. So whether you choose to have the booking available to them or not, that's more of a discussion than anything. But I definitely want to get their information, because what we know is the more clicks that it takes somebody to get into give me your information, the less likely they are going to be to actually make it all the way through the sequence. Right. So think of every click as one more reason for them to stop the sequence. So if you go to mine, it's like click to schedule a consult, all of that stuff would auto populate. Second click is submit. It goes to a booking sequence and they're like, I don't really want to do that. It doesn't matter. I'm going to call them in 5 minutes anyway. Then I'm going to take over the booking sequence from there. If they choose to go through the booking sequence, great. No harm, no foul. Okay. So when we're talking about user experience, visually, what do they see? Most importantly, what is the sequence for me to get their information? That's the most important thing as far as user experience. Now, if you want to get super nerdy in there with regard to the website, I'm going to share again. We can get into VSLs and talk about that stuff if you guys want to, but really what you guys want to think about, how many of you guys have heard of the hero's journey? Okay. So the hero's journey is essentially like the short version. If I scroll through here, is I have a problem. Okay. So do other people. What would that look like? Oh, I can be a better version of myself, right? Get started, right? Is kind of what that sequence should look like, right? Like I have a problem. Just like other people, we have a solution for you. Okay, that's a very, very like just the simplest version of the hero's journey that I could give you. Okay? But essentially that is what it should kind of look like. But also know that anywhere you go on my website, this button is going to be prominent. If I go to programs, the button this page is going to be riddled with those buttons, right? Free consultation, free consultation, free consultation. So I should almost never find myself on a page that they can't give me that information. The other thing that people might look at is how many of you guys have a pricing inquiry on your website? Like, hey, memberships. Okay, so a couple. Now, the question becomes, what happens when they hit that button? And typically this is where we see a second problem. So let's say that your visibility on Google is good. Let's say that your user experience is good. Your buttons are good. Your forms are built correctly. The follow-on problem that we might see is somebody hits a pricing inquiry and there's an automation that immediately shoots over the pricing. Does anybody have that? Okay. So if you do have that, I know you don't, Victoria, because I know I told you to take it off. So immediately what I want to do is I want to turn that off. Okay. Now the question becomes why? Well, people are price shopping. Yes and no. The short answer is we don't actually know. That's a huge assumption to make. So let's assume that we have no idea if they're price shopping or not. The primary reason that we want to take that automation off specifically is because when that goes out without me having any sort of opportunity to communicate value, I have now lost control of the sale. Okay. So there's something called the control V, right? So there's obviously two trajectories in a V. One is my trajectory and it leads to a sale. The other one is the potential client's trajectory and that leads away from the sale. So at any point, or the longer that the client maintains control of the process, we move further away from the desired outcome, which is the sale, right? So in the sale process, I want to maintain control of everything. If I immediately shoot out the price, there's going to be very likely, all of you would probably agree, an incorrect assumption about the price value proposition that they are exploring. Is that fair? Meaning like they see a price and they're like, oh, that's expensive. Like the question is like, what's expensive? You don't even know what we do. So in order to keep control of that, I'm going to maintain control of that. If you want to know my prices, we're going to have a conversation about that. Okay. So those are just a couple things inside the kind of user experience and different like things you could look at. So where are your buttons located? Prominently, always have a call to action. Simplify those forms: name, email, phone number. Second, make sure that whatever that click sequence looks like is that as soon as possible, I want to collect that information and only that information. Okay. If you want to have a booking sequence, great. Put it on the back end of collecting that information. Significantly easier. Okay. Because if they go to the website and I don't get their information, then it doesn't matter. Okay. So when it comes to UX questions there, what other questions do you have on the website, forms, all that kind of stuff?
I have a question for you, Fern.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I love the logic behind what you're proposing.
Mhm.
What I often we occasionally still even get some end arounds from people that before they'll even agree to a consultation. They're like, well,
Right.
yeah, I want to know what the prices are before I come in, and then they'll
Right.
Instagram us or something to kind of get around,
Right.
to get in our face, or just email us. And what's your play there?
Yep. So the first thing about that is, and answer candidly, what is the likelihood that you think that person is going to join? Before we get into that, just like let's just if we outline that and we know the type of people that we like to work with, what is the likelihood that that person who's like, well, I need to know the price for me to come in there?
Yeah,
Probably pretty, probably
it's
pretty low.
30% or lower. Yeah.
Right. So now we'll put that off to the side because it's not always true. But there's a general sequence for that conversation. So they're like, hey, I was just looking for prices. The first step is you tell people that's typically something you discuss in person because there's a wide range of options. And I want to know what it is that you want so that I can answer appropriately. Okay. They might push back on that. Handful of a good portion of them will just come in anyway. But let's go down worst case scenario. They push back on that. Okay, they're like, hey, cool. Then I'm going to give a range. And I'm going to say, hey, prices can go anywhere from $25 all the way to $1,000, depending on what you're looking for, which is why we do the consult to figure out if this is something that we can help you with. Right? There's a subset of that people, which I would just describe as assholes, who are just going to be like, just tell me the prices. At which point I'll just give them the high price because I've kind of screened them at this point. And I'm like, okay, if this person is clearly only shopping and looking for a low price point, so I'm going to give them like my month to month rate or whatever your high rate is. And I can almost assuredly tell you that person's not showing up. Okay. So in that process, I'm going to screen them. I'm not going to waste a ton of time with them, but that's like the general flow. Be like, hey, we typically do that in person. We kind of want to know what it is that we can help you with so that we can explain to you like what it is that we do, show you around and introduce you to the staff. Cool. Yeah, I just really kind of want to know what a range is. Okay, here's the range depending on what you want. There's different options. Depends on if you want to do nutrition, personal training, group class, or drop in. But I'll give the lowest of the low, which is a drop in. I'll give the highest of the high, which is like some sort of nutrition, personal training combo. And then if they just push back, then I'm just going to give them the prices at that point because they're just shopping. And I'm like, cool, I'm not going to waste any time on this one. Right. So that's the general flow of that. But I'm going to do everything I can to maintain control to try to get them to come in. After that, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not going to waste my time with that. I can already with high degree of confidence predict that this person would be a problem client anyway. So I'm going to avoid it like the plague, simply because of the way they communicate. Okay.
Vern,
Thank you.
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah. What you got?
Okay. So I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate or what, but basically like my kind of pushback on that is like my thoughts as a consumer is like, I'm thinking what other businesses do I have to have several conversations and click through anything really to learn how much it costs? And then as a business owner, I'm like, the whole kind of thing you described, like if someone just wants to know my, I don't want to have an email, then a call, then a consult, I'm like, it's $300. If you're in, cool, take the next step.
Right.
Contact us. So like that's my, if I
for sure
my individual gut reaction is if I go to a business and I can't find their price, I get distrustful or like, oh, this is too much. I don't want to talk to somebody to learn what is a very, to me, elemental piece of information about engagement with that business.
So there's absolutely, I don't actually disagree with you. And so I'll kind of give the contextual answer here. I would not consider you to be average run-of-the-mill gym, right? I know the size of the gym. You had the ability to turn clients away. And if the ability you have the client base that you want and you're doing the things that you want, then I would recommend and have recommended for clients that now becomes your first filter because you have good lead flow, you have the members that you want, and now I want to basically reduce or create efficiency in my lead flow. The vast majority of gyms are not in that place where they're just like, hey, I've got all the leads that I would ever want and we're good. So in that scenario, I don't want to put that filter on the front end. I want to try to capture every single person that I can. So at the point somebody's just like, yeah, I've got too many, I'm like, put your prices on the website. Outside of that, I'm like, take them down. And I wouldn't even do that, Dave. I would just literally put the prices on the website if it was in your scenario. Most people don't have that problem. I want them to have that problem. Like at 5 years out, and we're like, everybody's like, I'm good on the clients. I'm like, everybody put your prices on the website. Okay. The other thing that for the most part, at this point, we're 2 decades into this thing, right? David, like you, what are you, 17? How long has South Brooklyn been open?
We're in our 16th.
Yeah, so 16, almost 20 years for you, but CrossFit's been around for 20. And most people who are searching have a pretty good idea of what a CrossFit gym costs. Let's call it like 135 all the way up into 200 plus, right? So at that point, if this person's pushing so hard, the reality is very likely that I'm going to get haggled about $20. So I want to screen them as they come through in some scenarios, but I also want to try to lead with customer service, right? But again, at the point that you're good, put them up there. I don't care. So this is not an all or nothing format. This is just that we find is most effective for people who are looking to grow and are struggling to convert, either getting leads or converting leads. And it usually starts with that step process. Like, can somebody find you on the website or on the internet? What is your user experience? And then what does the lead flow or sales process look like? And there's no perfect scenario there. We teach people to do it about a dozen different ways. At the end of the day, it should all be data driven. I'm giving you guys some generalities, going back to where I started, which is like, we track the numbers in order to find out where the gaps are. That information tells us how we should refine that whole process. Cool. Questions there?
I don't know if there's going back to the data, because I see it, like we have our prices on our website and I've seen it working. I've had this conversation with other owners, plus or minus, and I totally get it, like what you just said of where you are. Do you have a stat that you look at, like where your leads are? I mean, it's like your capacity of your members. because I go back and forth. I haven't removed it, but
Mhm.
I found it sometimes it's been helpful if I'm doing, say, not an in-person, but sometimes we do Zoom, calls with potential.
Right.
And I've been able to pull it up on the website. I said, I can't click this for you. And they do it. Like I've gotten several, so it's a fine line, but maybe it's like I hide those on the website. But I'm just trying to feel like, have you found that in looking at the various gyms, is there certain levels of where they are? I mean, I might try playing with it just to test it out for a couple months and see, but I didn't know if there was a way
I
you
think
can't.
I think I understand the question. So, and I would tend to agree with your assessment, which is just like training, right? Log it, start tracking like which one of those converts the best,
Okay.
and then play around it. Because again, take the numbers down, see if your lead flow goes up over 6 weeks. So if you take the prices down and all of a sudden I'm getting, call it 15 to 20% more leads because people are filling that out because they want to know, I'll take that all day, 15 to 20% increase in leads. Because then what I'll probably figure out is now there's a gap between like either scheduling that Zoom call or the consult, at which point now I need to figure out how do I solve for that. Is it my follow-up time? Is it the verbiage that I use? Is it the actual booking sequence and how I do that? Those are all things that I would then dive into. But the point is like I want the increased 15 to 20% of leads.
Okay. And about 6 weeks testing, do you find like 6 to 8 weeks is a good test range?
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably figure it out in 4, but 6 is a very, very safe. Yeah. I like more than a month because that typically would cover weird holidays or seasonal stuff. So I'll typically do like 6 to 8 usually and just let it ride. And if it drops off, well, then now I know I can go back to the other version and do it that way. So, and that goes into that kind of last piece, which is lead management, which is like, you got to know your numbers. Like if you guys use Push Press Grow or Kilo or any version of Go High Level, which is that backend software that they're all white labeling, that's fine. Or if you're using Trello or something like that, but you have to know those numbers. You have to know how many leads you get, how many of them you're communicating with initially, and then how many of them are showing up for either an intro or to join. You have to know those numbers. Far more often than not, people don't have a lead problem. They have some sort of conversion or communication problem. If I ask you how many leads, you're like, I get 20 leads a month. And you're like, but I'm losing members every month. Well, that means that you're not managing the leads correctly or aggressively enough. Okay. And all of this is when we teach people to start working through this process, we have to optimize this organic lead flow management first. A lot of people like to lead into some sort of paid lead gen. And the reality is like, if you can't manage your organic lead gen and optimize that, you're definitely not going to be able to manage paid lead gen. It will just create a larger problem for you down the road. So optimize what you have organically. Then we can talk about maximizing lead gen in a paid format of some sort. And the math on that is usually pretty obvious for most gyms as far as like when lead gen would be necessary or paid lead gen, excuse me. So cool. What else, guys? And I don't want to take the whole time, Danielle, so tell me to shut up if I need to.
No, this is great. Well, actually, this kind of segues into one of the questions I have, because over time, the most recent experience I've had was with UpLaunch, and they put a big emphasis when we created my website to do a blog. And I know that's also part of your content and optimizing, pushing you up in the search engine. But it sounds like from what you're saying, that would come second to after the lead flow first, in terms of an order of priorities. And in general, what's your opinion with owners have an owner operated gym? Like, how much time should you spend on that, or is it something that you've seen a return on?
It's definitely a thing. Now it's just like context, right? It's just like, hey, yes, we should do blogs. But the reality with blogs, if I'm going to start doing that, because I do quite a bit of it, that is a long play. So if you're going to start doing blogs, number one, if you just start writing blogs, you could actually hurt yourself on SEO if the blogs are too short, if they're not optimized, if your photos are not done correctly, all that stuff, if they're not titled correctly. There's a whole sequence to that. They absolutely work when done well. And it's a long play, right? So if I start a series of blogs, it's going to take a minimum of 90 days for Google to catch up with that anyway. at which point it would start performing. So I tell people, I'm like, yes, you should do that. You should, however, look at that on like a long, low trajectory, meaning like this should be an endeavor that you're looking at over 9 to 12 months to build that SEO for you, right? So just a couple of ideas on blogs. Write a series on supplement education. Write a series on recovery. Write a series on training while injured. Write a series on how to start CrossFit. All of those you could pull a 4 to 5 blog sequence out of. And then you're going to need to do a little homework on the old Google machine and like get yourself educated on like how to title blogs, how to do your, like, what is the length of a blog? Typically, like what'll perform better is about 700 words, stuff like that. So they absolutely work. It's not something that you're going to get immediate return on. And that should be looped into an overall strategy to include something like direct response email. So like I would create a sequence of blogs that had email sequences attached to them that go out to like every person that I have on my email list that then point to my website that has a call to action on it. Whether it's nutrition or anything like that. So you can definitely leverage it, but it should be a process is typically where I tell people to start.
Is anyone on this call currently in the weeds with doing a blog consistently? So million, yeah, okay.
So
we've done a blog post every single day for 16 years without missing a single day.
And
David's a unicorn.
Do you outsource those, or are you doing that yourself?
I do them myself. I've had throughout the years a few people who work at the gym, but it's not. I mean, I don't look at it as lead gen. Our blog, our daily blog, is like the old CrossFit.com picture of a member, something going on at the gym. It's never not gym focused. It's the workout of the day, and it's the only place they can find the workout of the day. So our members have been habituated to check the blog every single day. They're coming to the gym, and they'll automatically get, oh, a picture of Danielle working out, cool, from last week's event. Oh, we're doing a pride workout this weekend, awesome. So again, I don't think of it as all as lead gen. It's more like culture curation and like a scrapbook for the gym. But we still get like 600 plus hits a day on our gym blog. And again, part of it is like the internet's changed a lot since we started doing that. It used to be like blogs were super common and prevalent. Now everything's on social media. But for us, the candy to get there is that's where I'm going to find the workout. And then while they're there, other cool shit that I can learn about with the gym and events and things and culture and an article. But that's how we do it.
Yeah, the thing that can feel so sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No worries. I was going to say we got rid of our blog a couple of years ago, and it was a great day for me because I think it falls into the bucket of like one of those things I just didn't want to do. And it's like, yeah, I have better stuff. That's how I felt. And not to say that I don't respect David for 16 years of doing that. That's hardcore. Where I put the energy is we now have a weekly newsletter that we spend a lot of time on, and I have a communication specialist that does an excellent job. And so some of the things that David said, like our members are sort of anticipating, now it's just on a weekly front, and we get a lot out of that. So I'm happy to send the format to you guys if any of you want to gander at it. So.
Thanks, Rob. Daniel, you had chimed in too, that you have a blog as well. Did you want to share, or could you share with us your approach?
Yeah, we use it as part of a relevancy campaign in our marketing calendar. And what that means is that we just post consistent material that's relevant to our client avatar, to that person that's visiting our website. But we bury our blog down in the kitchen sink. So you can only find it in the footer of the page so that new people to the website don't get lost, right? We want them to do one thing, which is go to that call to action button. So it's part of the relevancy campaign. So anytime anybody's Googling anything fitness or looking anything fitness up, they should see us as like the presence of it in our area, and the material we're posting should be relevant to them all the time.
And I was gonna chime because I'm glad you brought that up, Daniel. So the relevancy would be things that people are likely searching, right? So like, is CrossFit dangerous? Can I do CrossFit over 50? Will CrossFit help me lose weight? Like all those types of things. Like, and the part that can feel a little gross about blogging is like titling should be a little clickbaity. So anything that would be like a number, meaning like the 4 easiest ways to start CrossFit, like those things will perform well in a blog. Google rewards those. Doesn't mean your content has to be clickbaity and gross, but understand that like I do need to marry the two ideas. Like I want to provide value and education, but I also want it to show up as a relevant topic as Google measures it, because it's Google's constantly crawling your website and it's going to measure that against other things. So then you get into like backlinks and meta tags and all that other kind of stuff. But
Anyone else? I think Jill, did you have your hand up? Or okay.
Sorry, I didn't, and I couldn't unmute, so but I didn't.
No, I mean, another question I had too to put out to the group was, in terms of the value of using external links to drive traffic from partners and other locals in the community, since Danielle had just talked about the relevancy campaign, either Fern, would you want to speak to that, or anyone else chime in on that?
So kind of what you're referring to there is what's typically referred to as backlinks. Mm-hmm. So backlinks in articles, Google does reward for high frequency of backlinks. Now, you don't want to get crazy with your backlinks because it can come off a little weird, but they do help over time. And backlinks don't always have to be external. Backlinks can be internal to your own blogs, right? So if I have like David, if you had a series of, I don't do math well, a gabillion blogs, and I'm referencing something from a previous blog, a backlink could be that would hyperlink to a previous link on my in my blog sequence. So it doesn't always have to be external. So backlinks are backlinks. But if you guys are, like, an example would be if you're writing something and referencing just the term CrossFit, I would recommend that you backlink that to CrossFit.com. It helps them and it helps you. Most WordPress websites, a lot of them have AI built in there now, where it will say, hey, the optimal number of backlinks for this blog article would be 10 or something like that, which seems like a lot, and it probably is. But even if you just added 3 more in there based on the words that you have in there, then the score, or how that article or that blog would be ranked, would go up.
Any other questions? I didn't want to go into a different rabbit hole, but I was just curious of what supporting servers do you use for your blogs? As you guys know, I mentioned UpLaunch. So they actually had a separate training for blog writing, like where I was actually met with a rep for an hour, and then I never got on the wagon to do that consistently, truth be told. But yeah, I was interested in you guys sharing, and then also what your experience may be, good or bad. David, who are you using? Or
I use WordPress.
WordPress.
Yeah, and it's basic and simple.
Yeah, it's probably has the most resources for on the internet for how to use WordPress because it's been around so long.
Yeah.
And you manage that all yourself, or do you have someone else helping to support you with that?
So, I mean, the website, we had one of our members who is a graphic designer, like Fern said, in-source to your people. She did our website. She revamped it. It's been a long time. It's probably been like 5 or 6 years at least, if not more, in terms of the basic architecture. But yeah, I mean, it pretty much, like, we'll update some text on it here and there, but for the most part, we don't really touch it that much. And the main thing is just the daily blog post, the workout of the day. That's our main interaction with it.
I think the key thing there, Danielle, is like, sorry, David, is that you should own your website. I highly recommend that you own your website. So whoever does it, like if you were to break ties with them, you should be able to keep that. That's my recommendation.
Bern, I'm kind of curious what you think about, like, any thoughts on, like, because I was just looking at my backend on WordPress right now in terms of like, and it's going to be completely different place to place, et cetera. But like,
Right.
when you look at the analytics of like how many sessions, page views, things like that, like what are there any guidelines that you would, or things you would think about, or is that not really corollary to something else?
No, it is, but like we're starting to branch into an area where I'm like getting a bit out of my depth. I do have somebody that helps me with that, but the short and sweet is like I do want to look at like bounce rates and be like how like what is the bounce rate on a certain page, particularly if it's a page that I'm driving traffic to. So let's say it's your home page and the bounce rate on there is like 90%. And for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, a bounce rate is just like somebody shows up, then they leave and they take no action. They don't scroll, they don't navigate, they don't do anything. I would want to look at like bounce rate and then
What's a good bounce rate?
You're probably crushing on most websites if you have like 50% bounce rate.
Like I'm looking at it says 56%. I've never even looked at that number before in my life.
That's great. Yeah. So it's not high, it's not low. And the other thing would be, I forget what the term is, but essentially like time on the page, like how long are they there would be the other thing.
The session duration.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it is. Sorry. I thought there was another metric or acronym for it, but that's essentially what it is. Would be the other one. And then looking at which pages, session duration. I mean, if you were to get anything near 5 minutes, you'd be king of the world. Yeah.
Bern, who do you use to help you manage? You had mentioned.
So we use a company in the UK called Active Blueprint. I think they just Andy and the team do a great job building websites. And that's typically who we recommend. I have no affiliation with them in any way, shape, or form. I just think they do a good job. He made my website. Anybody that asks me about a website, I push them to Andy. Full disclosure, they cannot be the most timely, but they make great websites.
Thank you. Anyone else want to have any other questions or want to share, or has anyone switched up their site? You know, Rob, how many times have you switched up your site over the years? Or
oh yeah, we used to do our site on stone tablets back in the day, and you have to each day you'd have to farmers carry to the mountain. And anyway, no, so yeah, I've switched it 100 times. I got off of WordPress because I was unable to control like malicious sort of code injection that was happening on our mobile site, and like it was really difficult for me to manage that. And again, it fell into that sphere of things that was just like, I don't have time for this. So I went with Squarespace for several years, and then just recently, after using PushPress for the gym management stuff and then buying onto their CRM, which is called Grow, I finally completed the trifecta, and now I have them manage the site as well. And that seems to be working pretty well. The thing I like about it is that it's integrated, but to Fern's initial sort of point, like I'm already thinking that the PC was showing like, hey, collect the information first before you schedule the appointment and stuff. Like I got to do I don't know if I can even do that. So I'm still a little bit. Oh, can you?
Yeah, you can. I will tell you this: I have never seen that not improve lead flow.
Okay.
Now, to what degree, that's going to vary, but I have never seen it hurt lead flow to switch the order.
All right, I'm going to do that. So thanks. I was a little anxious after you gave me the feedback, because I was like, oh yeah, that's an easy win. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy with my stuff. I was an UpLaunch customer as well, Danielle, for a little bit, and and this is another area where we sort of kind of have changed our strategy many times. But the power of these sort of SMS drips and email drips, it's very, very nuanced. And like recently, we just started to get customers that are like, stop texting me. And it's hard to manage, because we want to be persistent, but we also don't want to be a pain in the ass. So
I would argue that you should go to that point, Rob. And as gross as it might feel, like that's the due diligence that is going to optimize and maximize lead flow. Because remember, it's not like you cold called them; like they reached out to you. Yeah. And until they say no, we tell everybody, I'm like, just follow up with them. Like when I'm like every day, at least for the first 7 to 10 days. And then after that, you can spread that sequence out. But I tell everyone, like, get a no or keep hitting them.
Yeah, I guess
contact
it's
them every day.
a numbers game, right? So I got to look at
Yeah.
the numbers. It's 2 out
It
of
is.
like 300 is not, I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
Rob, you can
that,
set up on your push press grow, you can set up the automated, you in charge of that. So you can spread it out those automated messages every 2 weeks. It's actually pretty easy to do. I had a phone call with that. And then there's all leads that like we have, when people are required for the prices, they want to either price or they want to just come in for the trial class. So we have a funnel. And then they have 2 different funnels going through those different text messages and the emails that we set up. And then if they don't take a class or they take a class, they go in the leads, old leads, and then they get the different sequences every 2 weeks just to keep them accountable that we want to still have them at our gym at any time. But I've just grow been awesome for us. I cannot tell anything. The customer service we did up launch, Danielle, customer service was awful. Like anything I needed to change, it will literally take like a week and a half to get back to me. With a push press grow, it's literally within like minutes. If I reach to them like at 10 o'clock at night, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I have an email with either video, how to fix that, or the links, or they're actually going to do it for me. So like, I don't know, that's been working for us. Fern knows that. But Rob, ask questions, bug them. They love when you're bugging them, and they will help you. Make a phone call, schedule phone calls every 2 weeks, and just go over what they have new things. And they have a blogs and webinars that you can learn pretty easy how to do and what to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've had a similar experience so far. One anecdote is they offer just book a customer success call anytime you want, and it's like just a 30-minute call. And as again, I even think about that with my members, like, hey, they should be able to do that too. Just lead help first, as Chris Cooper would say. So, yeah, but yeah, thank you for that. I will space out some of my stuff and see if I can get a better result.
I just asked a question because I have up launch and we were there at the kind of the very beginning. And one thing I liked about it was not only for the leads, but also for client management. Like I always wanted to have a journey. The minute someone touches us, do they leave and afterwards? And up launch does provide that, but they keep raising their prices. And as the services, I think it's gone, so I am looking at different things and like, I'm all in, everything's integrated because I got Zen Planner, Sugar, so it's kind of like break it. So just kind of curious in regards to, and I'll start digging in, but now you're on the phone, like the push, press, grow, does that give you the ability to manage your client all the way through? Because that to me is almost because going back to retention is our best marketing. So I'm trying to look at like one-stop shopping. And I just feel like right now Up Launch has had it, but they haven't grown with where everything's coming out. And I'm a bit frustrated.
I can speak to this a little bit, Ardith. So I kind of put it here in the comments. So if you hear the terms push, press, grow, Kilo, Gym Lead Machine, Gym Solution, I think there's a couple other ones in there. All of those are the same. They're sold by different companies. These companies will white label a software called Go High Level. That is the software that they're using. I will tell you, I at least currently believe that to be the most robust software. Which is good and bad. It's robust and it gives you everything you want. The bad part is it's robust and it gives you everything that you want. So the learning curve there can be pretty steep. I've worked with very few clients that fully understand and utilize its capabilities because it is immense. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
You're
Fern,
immense, Fern.
What's that?
I said you're immense.
Not next to you, my friend.
Fern, you mentioned like we had looked into push press because they're affiliated with Zen Planner. So I was like, oh, we'll get on a call. And like when they were like, we're gonna text your clients these leads every single day and blah 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 and send them articles. To me, I was like, only red flag. If a business, it's like dating somebody. If you go out on a date, like they're just like texting you every day, it's too thirsty. And it's like, to me, it seemed like all the copy was like so inauthentic to our culture and our identity, and it just seemed here's a conveyor belt of information you're on, and like I hated it. And I was like, we're here if you want to join us, but if not, like we're not thirsty. Like I don't care. Here's what we cost.
Right.
And again, here deal with
you
it.
guys are in a different scenario. However, you can change all of it in all of those platforms. So all of mine is custom built. Like because I felt the same way that when I saw it, David, where I was just like, oh, that doesn't sound like me at all. I would never say those words. They would never come out of my mouth. So there was a huge disconnect in there. So I turned all of them off and rebuilt them all. And for sure, there is on leads that are not communicating, I don't think there's a too high frequency. Daily is fine. Once they get in, then I think there's a very natural frequency of both underlying automation and then organic touch points. All of which should be intentional, right? If I'm just texting them, that's just dumb. So I definitely don't recommend that. People hate that.
One thing just to interject, guys, I know Allison's on this call. I brought this up at our meetup in Maryland, but part of the marketing content toolkit, you have access through affiliate tools. There was an addition as of this past December with an email sequence. So for those of you who don't have a CRM system, there's several different touch points. It's there for you to review, customize as you want to, get a little perspective too. Maybe you might be inspired and find a touch point that you're not necessarily including, but just know that that's there for you to use. And it goes as far as to be like, this is where you put your affiliate name, interject with this video asset. There's a whole library of different videos that you can reference in the emails. So I worked with UpLaunch. I did subscribe to their CRM system and it was just too much for where I was at. And so I had it for maybe 3 months and didn't commit fully to it. And then it also didn't sound authentic. So when I read the email sequence that came out by HQ, it really resonated with me. So it would be great to get your feedback on that as well. You can always email me with that. But yeah, just have an awareness it's there. The end. No.
Where is that, Danielle?
So that sequence, if you log on to affiliate tools and you click on the button business,
okay,
you'll drop down and see the tab that says marketing. And in there, there's just a series of drives. That's where the video assets live. You'll see email sequence. There's also a 4-week marketing plan in there. So if you have any issues finding that, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to share my screen and walk you through that.
Thank you so much.
Is Daniel still on? Let's see.
Yep, yeah. I'm here. I'm just going on off of mute because I'm chasing a 3-year-old at the park.
Oh, I get it. So Daniel, is your question, are you looking for percentages here in this question? So what metrics equal success, lead, scheduled, show, new client, and the lifetime? Are you looking for a metric on each one of those, or what? I want to understand the question.
Yeah, like I give you an example, like we shoot for, and our scoreboard show live, from a lead to a scheduled is going to be a 60% conversion. We have an 80% plus on the show rate, and then we have a 98% close rate. Our lifetime is 2.5 years.
Those are all fantastic. So you get A+ on all of those.
What do you deem as successful?
I would deem successful trying to get to an A+ where you're at. Like I know Allison's numbers are very similar because we were talking about this last week. So that lifetime engagement over 2 years is killer. I will tell you that typically the conversion rate after show is high for everybody. So I know a lot of people like to tout that, but the reality is just like almost everybody that walks into a CrossFit gym is going to buy. Really, we want to go one step back. Right? You say you had 76%, or what was the percentage on show? Sorry,
we have an 80% show rate.
That's really high. I would tell you if you were getting 60 to 70%, that would also be very good. That's a really high show rate. Now, without context, then I would need numbers, right? Like 80% of how many leads, right? Is it 40? Is it 10? Is it paid and organic? I would just have like more questions.
That's just our organic funnel. But you said you have to identify at the beginning of this, you said you have to be able to identify the holes in your funnel to know what to go and fix, which I agree to. You gave the statistics of 20 leads. You had a 6 out of the 20, which is a 30% conversion to scheduled. Is that good for you?
No,
I mean,
it's not.
That
good.
would be great for paid.
Correct. But I was just throwing those number out. Those are definitely not good. I was trying to give an example of like identifying a gap in that scenario, but no, I would not consider that to be good.
Okay, I just want to know what you see as good. I mean, I'm just still looking for an answer.
So your numbers
good
are,
or what?
so if it is organic only, then I would tell you like 60 to 70% would be good. If you're at 80%, I would be like, that's very good. If it's paid, or if it's a combination of paid and organic, then that number is obviously going to drop because the lead flow is gonna start to go up, and the quality of leads is going to start to go down. At which point, if you were doing 50%, that would be fantastic, and I would tell you you should be shooting for anywhere between 25 to 40% in a combination of those two.
Okay, thanks. Other thing I wanted to add in about CRMs is over years we've just built our own. And I think that everybody can honestly do it. It's so simple today with the tools available on the internet. And especially because, I mean, anytime I'm in 6 to a dozen different CRMs with different gyms just to see what they're doing, especially franchises, because they've got someone looking over it. But we utilize a system called Chirp. I think it's CHIRRP. And Rob's used it before with us, but it's a text message automation that goes back and forth, and you can automate it. Yeah. Which we do, but we also have a manual step in that we can do it. The cool thing about Chirp is that from one dashboard, you can allow your team to work the same number. And so everyone's working everyone until they get a no, which helps push people through the funnel faster.
Well, since no one's talking, I can always talk, but I wanted to go back, Daniel, to when you're looking at lifetime, and I know we're speaking specific to websites. And Fern, you have mentioned to the value of looking at retention, not only from like the life cycle, but also class attendance, because where my head goes to is, say you're in a super transient area. For example, my first affiliate was in the heart of DC. We catered to a lot of businesses. So that number would probably be pretty skewed when you're looking at life cycle, just based on our churn with people moving based on their job. Is that something you come across, Fern? And I don't know if I'm going down a rabbit hole or steering the direction way off here, but
I mean, churn is a thing, right? Like nobody's going to get to 100%. That's not real. It's always like, hey, start to measure it. Like, what is your churn? And that churn rate also helps you identify like what do you actually need. And we didn't really get to this, but like a lot of us forget, like, what is the question? How many leads do I need? Need for what? To need to outpace my churn, right? So the first thing I have to ask is like, what is my churn? How many people are walking out the door every single month? I would tell you 95% retention or 95 plus, you're doing really well. In the overall gym industry, I think probably people would give you a 90% would be A plus, and a CrossFit gym, I would bump that up and it would be 95%. Now that does require some context in the sense of like, how large is the gym? So like David's gym, you know, in the hundreds and hundreds is going to have probably different metrics than a gym that has 125 people, and what percentage of them are walking out the door every single month. That will start to determine how heavily do I need to lean into lead flow? Again, so churn rate, let's just call it 3% at 100 versus 3% at 300 clients, has a significant difference in what is required to outpace churn at this point. And am I maximizing organic? And then at what point do I now need to consider potentially looking at paid lead gen, right? So for instance, we get someone to the tune of 25 to 30 organic leads every single month, and even converting it up at a good rate of 70%, that's going to lead to issues as we're kind of like in the high 200s for clients between holds and cancellations, because I'm always trying to outpace both of those on a monthly basis. Again, so as your gym grows, the math changes. So what's required to outpace that is something I need to pay attention to. What I need at 100 is not what I need at 300, which is not what I need at 800.
Yeah.
Can I just go back, just following up on what Daniel said about just what, in your opinion, Fern, on what's on percentage? We talked about, yeah, hitting 80% on the show rate, 67%. But let's take it back a second, because I didn't quite hear Daniel's full numbers, but I do track this. So I have like a percentage of leads to intros, and then like intros to attend, you know, because sometimes they book and they don't show up, and then attend to sales, and then leads to sales. Those are kind of the metrics I'm looking at.
Right.
So what would be, again, just going back to maybe that either leads to intros or the schedule? What was a good percentage in your mind?
I think the minimum you should be shooting for would be like 70%.
Okay. I think I've heard that before. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
like Daniel's are higher, which is great. I think he said 86 or something, like 87%, which is fantastic.
yeah. Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with how you book and confirm booking. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now this is a second question, not quite as related, but it kind of ties into, I think, what we're talking about. And I think you just had a podcast or something recently that's talking about like the rule of 75, you know, how gyms, you know, there's,
Oh, yes.
where
Yep.
you are. And that's something like, I mean, where we have been stuck, and I go for our group members, like we're, I don't know, maybe 180 right now. The most we've ever had was maybe 210, you know, 200.
Okay.
So I've always like, my goal is like you know, knowing where optimizing, probably like that 225, 230s, but from our group. Again, we have some other PT only, but this is our bread and butter. But every time we kind of get to that number, like a year ago right now, we were at the 210. And I'm like, we got it. You know, and now we're like, we're back. So what are some of the key things? And, you know, just maybe 3 highlights, like what are the things, and maybe this is what we're talking about right now, as that focusing of what makes the difference of, you know, when you're 75 gym, you're 150 gym, you're a 225, you're David, whatever, 300, like what are some of those key tipping points that should be spending the energy at?
So correct me if I heard this right. You are at the 180 mark currently.
On our group, yeah, a core group.
Got it.
Know, we've got other stuff. We're over 200 members, but in regards to that pure coming in for group classes, we can't seem to really consistently break that next tier.
Okay. Do you know by chance, on average, how many people are canceling every single month?
Yeah, and this year so far has been higher than last year, and I've dug into it, and I like this month, I'm going to have 11 people leave, 11 all move.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and that's not so bad, but we had some that were 20, and I looked at it. A lot of there was moving. I went into who left because they got busy. You know what I mean? So diving into those, going back to that, that's on us. Like we didn't give them, and to steal your phrase, the best hour of their day. So really focusing there.
So the first thing I would do is I would track that. I track it weekly, but for sure track it monthly, and you should know what that numbers are. The reason for that is it gives you the opportunity to be proactive about any sort of trends, right? And also it also tells you how many leads do I need, going back to that other question, like how many do I need based on who's leaving. Now I would tell you that's probably a little bit high. So you're like, you know, creeping up on 10% churn.
We've been like, I know I was trying to keep it below 5 or below, and probably averaging right now 7%. And we used to, you know, so it's, so that's my kind of like befuddlement.
So then, because the easiest sale is to keep who I have, kind of what you mentioned earlier. So I would start digging into attendance, number one, and not just lack of attendance, because typically everybody goes with that, but like, what is your average attendance? What is your average attendance across classes? What is your average attendance throughout the week? And start tracking that. So kind of in that same podcast, we talked about retention, shifting the mindset on retention away from being defensive to offensive, right? So defensive means I haven't seen David in 7 days, and I reach out to him. That's defensive. That should be baked into the cake and be systems that I have all the time. Offensive is leaning into the things that would create success or are creating success for people. Things like there's the systematic things I can track. So how many times are they coming in a month to either incentivize that, PRs, birthdays and anniversaries, things that I can kind of create wow moments for, or create experiences around. And then the other one, which is a little bit more challenging, but very doable, is how do I capture and communicate on the kind of like non-data driven stuff. So Rob, you know, has been here for 5 years, and he got his first rope climb today. how do I take that information, disseminate it very efficiently through the team in order for me to follow up with Rob to tell him congrats on that, or they had a baby, or they did something else like that. And this is where streamlining team communication can be very important, combined with, okay, what do you do with that information? So we've been playing around a lot with, number one, we use Slack for all that kind of stuff. And we have a Slack channel and there just says client wins. And there's no win too small, like zero, like 1% body fat loss on the in body. That is a win. The first box jumps, that is a win. Walking on their hands for 1 foot, that is a win. Like any win that we can track goes in there. You will have to train the staff to use it and just kind of like put that stuff in there. And then following up with that either on a one-on-one basis, or if you've got certain CRMs have segments, you know, so let's just say you did deadlifts yesterday, I'm just making this up, and 40 people had PRs. Okay, I can create a segment of 40 people, at least in Wodify I can, and then I can email that whole group of people and be like, you guys are studs. Great job on the PRs yesterday. Keep going. You know, nobody likes to be weak. Congrats. But communicating on things that are both relevant and relative in the moment. So this idea of like, how do I create systems and processes to essentially scale the unscalable, which is like, how do I have a ton of these one-on-one interactions, but do them fairly timely? So like yesterday, email came through just like, you know, so-and-so got engaged. I like literally took it, went in there, shot them both an email, like, hey, just want to tell you guys congrats on the engagement. And then my GM's going to send them some flowers or something like that. But that's like real quick. I get it and I send it out. But how do I streamline that whole process? Because when you typically have retention problems, it's not because they had a bad experience. They either one, moved, they can't do anything about that, or B, they just become indifferent to the service. They're just like, yeah, whatever, right? So how do I make them love it? Well, I make them love it, and it seems a little kooky, but like care, make them feel seen. You know, how do you capture that? Well, there's some obvious ways I could do that. It's just like, hey, they're have good attendance, encourage their good attendance. Don't just be like, never say anything about it. You know, it'd be no different if somebody was crushing it in the gym and you never told them good job. Like as a coach, you walk by and have beautiful squat form and you're just like, whatever. Like I would want to be like, that's amazing. Like great job, Jill. Like keep doing that. It's the same thing for all of these types of things too. Yeah. It's just creating those systematic processes with which to do that, so it doesn't feel like a heavy lift is typically where the challenge comes in.
No, that's good. That's helpful because we have a lot of those systems in place in regards to weddings, anniversaries, you know, your dog died, you had a baby, like cards, gifts, baby onesies, really implemented that, you know, birthday presents, anniversary presents, welcome boxes. Right. I think, and you just hit it, it's more of that day to day. I mean, we have a PR bell and different things, but I think it's more fine tuning those in the moment. So I thank you for that.
Lifetime attendance would be another one. You know, create incentives that people want. Right, like most coaches or gym owners, they're like, they want a level 1 or level 2, or they want to get on seminar staff. Like, create the stretch goal for them. You know, I have members, like as most of you guys do, as affiliate owners of 8+ years. I for sure know that probably 100% of you guys have members that have more than 750 attendances at your gym. What are we doing for those people? You know, how do we make them feel like there's somebody in the community, because they are? I mean, I've got a member who's been here with me for 14 years. Like, she's been here the whole time. She's watched me be the worst version of a gym owner ever. And I'm like, I owe you a lifetime of free memberships because like you watched me do this horrendously. She's still here.
So CrossFit Torque, it's kind of like Jason Ackerman's face next to a whiteboard every day. It seems like every day they have a member with a t-shirt that is their showcasing their milestones based on attendance. Also, and actually I've done a post on both of these. Boston CrossFit, the owner, does an actual plaque. It is beautiful and has that around the perimeter of his gym for 5-year. He has 1 year, 5-year, 10-year milestones. So I just thought that was great to showcase. So
Fern, can I ask you a question?
Please.
What did you say you used? So before the deadlift PR, using like segments to say, great job today, lifting heavy. Before that, you were mentioning like somebody's rope climb or just, you know.
Internal team communication comes up a lot. Like, what's the best platform? Like, how do I communicate with the team?
Right.
you can do anything well and you can do anything poorly. I have found that Slack is one of the better ones because Slack, now you have to build it correctly. Meaning you need to make the appropriate channels and you need to teach people how to use it. If you do it correctly, it works fantastically. If you don't, it's a nightmare. It's just a gigantic shitty text thread.
I've been there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I've tried some of the other ones inside of Wodify, but they're not there. They're not mobile friendly at this point, as far as like group chats, stuff like that. They don't work that well. Everybody can download Slack. It's really easy. And the thing I like about it is you can determine who's in what channel too. Like not all of my teammates are in every channel because they don't need to be. So not everybody sees every conversation that goes on in there.
Do you know, Fern, off the top of your head, what the cost is to subscribe to that monthly?
Slack, most of it, most gyms could use the free version. You would never need the paid version.
My team at HQ, we use Slack. I love it. And you could also do features like huddles, like, so you're not, you're laying off of using your phone. In the past, I've used the Facebook group and that was kind of, a putz.
Yeah. We've found a lot of success with Slack because we built it correctly and efficiently. So everybody knows the rules. We've created only the channels that we needed. And I recommend if you have channels and you're like, we don't use that channel, I'm like, archive it, get rid of it. So always trying to like condense the channels that you use.
Has anyone used any other platforms with their coaching teams?
Push Press just came up with Push Press, what is it, stuff. You can do that through that, but like we don't have that many coaches, so we have everybody in a group chat. But Push Press has that right now, the new thing that I know of. Never use it yet.
We use Slack.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because we've been using like our Facebook Messenger for certain things, and now it's gotten very messy because some people aren't on Facebook. It's just, and like, I don't know if it was from the Northeast Summit or were they talking about how the daily action, like what went right, what went wrong. So I created that, and now it's turned into this like shit show of so we're totally, so I'm like, and then we tried so I think the Slack, and I like the channels, like, so you could create, I'm assuming this is what you're doing, Fern, is that you have, well, it's your daily action, that's a channel, and another channel would be like, what happened with the client, like this client did this, so it's in that process, so you can kind of create those channels based on the type of communication with the group of people you're looking at, I'm assuming.
I'm gonna just drop our channels in here, but I can read them to you. But I'll drop a little snapshot here. So client concerns, client wins, coach development, events, facility equipment issues, general, which is like a catch-all for anything. Monday rundown, that's for like, I give like a Monday update to all the staff, nutrition, programming, sales, schedule, and then team shout outs. And the reality is just like, I could probably condense 3 of those. I could probably get rid of them and probably will in the next couple of months. But that way, all of the conversations are kept in that bucket, and it's not just a running thread of stuff. Because once I lose it in one of those threads, like Facebook Messenger, I'm never finding it again. And you can tag in there very effectively as well. I can tag the whole channel, or I can just tag Danielle. I'll be like, this is just for Danielle.
I'll be sending you guys a recording of this, but I've been vigorously taking notes. So I'm trying to take some of these topics and do some posts and get that up to you in case that you're not fully digesting all of this. So, well, just to be respectful of everyone's time, we've gone for an hour and a half. I want to just first thank you all for making this a priority, and especially Fern for taking the time. I know you are part of the Northeast community, Fern, even though you're technically like a little down south. Virginia is part of the Northeast, but I really appreciate Ardith. If there was any negative feedback about this summit related to Fern, just give it to me.
No, but I do have one question.
Okay. Yeah.
Good.
Why are your glasses always on top of your head? and I know we're
It's
not
my-
outside. It's your stick.
it's my-
It's your stick. It's like, that's
It's
it.
my
Like, this
it's my whoopee. It's my
your
it's my comfort blanket. Yeah, it's my comfort blanket. I just don't know what to do without them. So
I kind of figured that. Do you have different ones
Yeah.
depending on the scenario? Like you have your,
I used to have. I've had these for probably 7 years. It's probably the longest I've ever had a pair ever. So,
That's impressive.
but yeah, at this point, it's a running joke, and it was probably is my shtick at this point.
Thank you, Fern, for coming on board.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to help.
No, and just to be really transparent with all of you, this was the idea of the veterans call. Actually, Ardith was very instrumental with bringing this up. Any feedback you give me, I'm not going to entertain all of it, but I thought there was definitely tremendous value for bringing you all together initially. I want to be mindful that I'm not ostracizing people, especially newer owners who come in maybe with a different background and experience, that we could really, the idea with roundtables is to have this open forum with so many different perspectives. So I do think this call, it would have been really helpful to cast a bigger net to get more people chatting. But with that said, if there's a topic come up where I really think it would be helpful to get a group, experienced group, I'm definitely looking for more topics, and in the future, probably expanding out from it just being exclusive to veterans. But if you have any feedback on that, happy to have a conversation, shoot me an email, and yeah, so. We'll be rolling out a couple calls coming out in July. I'm trying to do my best to create a calendar for the next couple months, as these have been, we don't have an actual rigid structure. The roundtable program is being rebranded currently, so I'm going to be relaying more information to you about that. But we've started rolling out the regional roundtables, which is going to be very similar to the direction of the greater roundtable where we'll be going with that. So yeah, that should be coming out in the next month. And if you have any specific topics that you haven't seen, I'll be, please shoot them over to me. So.
Can I request Rob Miller not be on the next call that I'm on?
You can actually. Yeah.
Whether or not anyone listens to you, that's
Oh, God. Please ignore the chat. Rob doesn't know what he's talking about.
Don't be bashful, Jill. I mean, that's a typical reaction of someone who has that much talent. They're just like, I don't.
Oh my God.
So whatever.
Only
take
if
it
you
for
play
what it's
bass.
worth. I'll do that.
I know you will. I'm not singing.